Kevin at iRock Philly says that 2007 to 2011 era should have won more than one championship. Kevin's right. But that's what my problem has been with the Bryce Harper era of Phillies baseball, is that you don't even have the one championship to show for it. We will undoubtedly look back at like the 2022 to 2025 Phillies and say, with all that talent, how the hell did they never win a championship? And I know it's going to sound hyperbolic, but like, I'm just kind of looking at this from a realistic perspective. At this point, I'm pretty convinced the Phillies will not win a World Series with Bryce Harper. Because I don't know what the fix is. Like, play this one out. JT Realmuto is not the same player he once was. Still a very good player. Still a very useful catcher. Not the same player. Not getting any younger. And there's always the possibility, as is the case with catchers as they get older, that he's going to have to like move to first base. So is Bryce Harper going to move to the outfield so that JT Realmuto can play first base? I'm not so sure. Kyle Schwarber is probably going to command $30 million plus per year on the open market. On a shorter term deal, on a 3 or maybe 4 year deal, can you stomach it? Probably. Because you think about the alternative. If he leaves, what are you replacing Kyle Schwarber with? You have no one in the minors right now who can even come close to replacing the pop that Kyle Schwarber gives you. But is it really the best allocation of funds in a league that, while it doesn't have a salary cap, your owner is probably imposing some version of a cap on the front office? He's not going to spend $1 billion on the payroll. What's the goal? What's the thought? Ranger Suarez should be back. Ranger Suarez should have been extended in the offseason, and now it's entirely possible he will leave. Not great. What's the path to getting to a World Series and winning a World Series with a Bryce Harper-led team? And again, Harper's had some injuries. And on a human level, we will give him a bit of grace that there's a newborn in the house, and that kind of stress can certainly mess with you. And going into a playoff series, no one wants to think about the human side of things, but we will give at least a tiny modicum of understanding to Bryce Harper. And at the same time, an 0-for performance in an elimination game isn't even close to good enough. Not even remotely close. Wyatt also says, Marsh has to go. Keep Bader. Bohm has to go. Keep Stott for defense. Casty has to go. Kepler has to go. Keep JT. Find another catcher. Keep Ranger for the love of God. Well, Marsh had a really nice second half of the season. Marsh kind of proved why he's not an everyday guy in the playoffs. Bohm, I agree, Bohm should be gone. Stott is okay. He's your 9-hole hitter. Anybody who would want to go after Stott after the series is missing the point. Castellanos has another year left at $20 million. He had a clutch hit today. He did. He had a clutch hit tonight. He had like 2 hits the entire series, or 3 hits or whatever the entire series, and 2 of them were doubles. You go, all right, well, he had some not great comments. I think he probably needs a change of scenery. I think that is something that needs to be mutually agreed upon, and they've got to make that move. I'm not so sure that Kepler has to go, but if Kepler thinks he's an everyday guy, then I think that also has to be an amicable split. Chris Freed says, Kirkring has no future left in Philly. Mentally, he is cooked. Stick a fork in him. It's a shame. There was so much hope for Kirkring. This playoff series was about as bad as it could have been for him on a lot of levels. Jim Cochran says the 23 and 24 teams showed us how this would end, but is it over yet, or do we have to run it back in 26 because of awful contracts? Well, if you wanted to, you could let Real Muto leave. I don't love that. Does that mean you're going to have Marchand and Stubbs as your catchers? That's not ideal. If Schwarber leaves, who's your DH? Is Harper going to become the DH? Are they going to decide to go after Pete Alonso to play first base? Is that going to be a net positive over letting Schwarber go? Not so sure. If you move Castellanos, probably whatever you replace Castellanos with is going to be okay. If Castellanos were still like a very productive player and a legitimate everyday player, then you'd regret it. But things have fallen apart with him in the city. I think it's over. I don't see a path. The only way that I think you can win a World Series with Bryce Harper right now is if you bring back Ranger Suarez, you go into next season, you hope that Zach Wheeler gets healthy, and that you just ride having the best starting rotation in baseball again. And you just kind of hope and pray and cross your fingers and tootsie toes that the bats aren't going to die in the postseason, but they will. You almost need to bring in somebody who's like a Bryce Harper equivalent to this team. I don't know who that guy is. No team's going to want to trade that guy. Is there a free agent I'm missing that's like a real difference maker? I mean, nobody thought Juan Soto was going to come here in the offseason. If Juan Soto had been on this team, would he have made a significant difference? Probably not. But at least you would look at it next year and say, all right, you do have somebody on the team who's better than Bryce Harper. Who is actually better, in theory? Who's better on this team than Bryce Harper? Schwarber had an incredible MVP caliber season, but like on balance, is he really a better player than Bryce Harper? And are you convinced that he's going to be a better player than Bryce Harper for like the next 2, 3, 4 years? I would guess not. Kevin and Rock Philly asks, is there now more of a chance you don't bring back Schwarber and Real Muto? I don't know how you can. That I think is the real crux of the problem. And I think that's ultimately where it's going to be really, really difficult for the Phillies to kind of make the case internally that it's worth bringing these guys back. I don't know how you can. But then at the same time, you look at the potential replacements on the market and they're not exactly better, and you don't have anybody internally that you feel better about bringing in. Like, even if you wanted to say, all right, from an outfield perspective, we're going to move Castellanos and Justin Crawford's going to come up. Fine. Here's the problem. Where was Justin Crawford this season? He didn't ultimately come up. Oh, you're going to let Ranger Suarez go. Why? So Andrew Painter can come up? Okay. You guys in the Phillies front office sure made it sound like Andrew Painter, it was a foregone conclusion, was going to be on this team in the second half of the season, which maybe would have allowed you to have Luzardo and Suarez coming out of the bullpen in the playoffs. And then that didn't happen. And the worst part about that one, we didn't even really talk about it on the show. The worst part of that was that Dave Dombrowski had the audacity to go out and say to the media, well, I didn't exactly say he was going to be on the team in the second half of the series. I said that he was going to be available to be on the team in the second half of the season. I didn't say he would be on the team. I said he'd be available to be on the team. Fucking Temu.com, Mr. Rogers. Get out of here. Let's see. Oh, we got a super chat coming in. Zero Cool 78. Thank you, Zero Cool 78. $5 super chat. Bless your heart. High five to you. Says, I appreciate the coverage. My thought is trash all 9 position players for the AAA club, but the reality is they will all be back. No other option. I disagree, though, right? I would imagine that there will be some change. Castellanos, to me, has to be gone. I wouldn't be surprised if the Phillies try to figure out a nice way to have an amicable split with Kepler. It very clearly didn't go the way that he wanted it to here. Unless you're going to essentially say to Kepler, look, we're moving Castellanos, you're going to have an everyday spot in the outfield, then maybe it's worth trying to save. I don't think that at the end of the season, Kepler was the reason that this team didn't get the job done and didn't deliver in the postseason. The Schwarber thing really does become the big question. I don't think the Real Muto thing matters that much. I do think that if you can bring him back on a short-term deal, Real Muto's not the reason that you lost the series. Real Muto's had some clutch hits. He had some clutch hits down the stretch in the regular season. I still think he's one of the best defensive catchers in baseball. And I would still say that, like, as a guy who can hit in your lineup, like number 6 or so in your lineup from the right-hand side of the plate, like, still a guy that's worth having around on a short-term deal. If Real Muto wants like a 5-year deal, well then, okay, then he's gone. Schwarber to me is the real question. Schwarber to me is the one that, like, it felt like at the end of the regular season, right? Middleton essentially said, we'll do whatever it takes to bring him back. If you're Kyle Schwarber and you're being realistic and you know that you maybe have 1 or 2 seasons left of like significant production left, right? If Schwarber's realistic and he goes, I probably have 1 or 2 more seasons that I could try to do MVP caliber hitting like I did this year, and you're watching the return on this team get worse and worse and worse every year, or an early playoff. I mean, you could say, Russ, they made the NLDS. They didn't have to play in the wild card round. How could you say it's a step back? I would say that at the very least, it was a push. It was still a first round loss for the Phillies. It's technically the second round of the playoffs, but it's a first round loss. It's a first series loss. If you're Kyle Schwarber, do you look around and say, I don't know, is there a team out there that is better set up to compete in a significant way over the next 2-3 years? And if there is, I don't think he comes back. Jim says, even if you don't have big name replacements next season, why lock guys into big money contracts that you know won't get it done in October? Because I don't know what your alternative is. If you say to Schwarber, to Real Muto, even a Ranger Suarez, you say, hey guys, it's been a great run. It's over. If you try to tell that to your fans, hey, it was a great run. It's over. And you don't have anything to replace them with, then there is no belief that this team is going to be better or better positioned to get something done next year. If you're not going to lock guys into big money contracts because you're afraid of their inability to perform in October, but you don't have a realistic plan to replace them with someone who can, then you are essentially saying, instead of even just being a plateaued team that's going to continue to come up small in the first round of the playoffs, you're going to say, well, we're probably going to become a team that doesn't even make the playoffs, maybe isn't even competing for a playoff spot in the final month of the regular season. I don't know if that can help. I don't know if that makes things better. And it's also not like hockey, to some extent, if there's a generational talent available, or it's not like basketball, or even to some extent football, where like, oh, we can have a year where we still have some guys under big money contracts, but like there's injury issues or you're trying to retool and you end up getting a high draft pick that kind of helps to supplement your roster. That ain't happening. You don't have that. There's not an impact guy that you're going to be able to draft in the summer and add to this team, a year from now and say, oh yeah, that guy, that was worth it. Like it doesn't work like that.